Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. It is 4:30 p.m. Central Time. It is time for office hours here on the ViaMonstra Academy. Hey, Andrew. How are things?
I have my coffee. I have Johan in office hours. What could be better?
Not going to argue that point one bit. Not one bit. So I bought something I haven't thought I would need ever. I bought a new graphics card with a small, tiny PCI Express 1 or 2, one or the other, because I may or may not have burned one of my PCI slots in one of my workstations, and I needed that for the RAID controller, but it's currently occupied by a fairly large graphics card that I absolutely do not need in a Hyper-V host. I just need something to get video, otherwise the machine argues with me. Plus, it's useful to be able to plug in a monitor, so that's what I'm going to test later on, see if I can get some image out of it.
Well, it may not be the most exciting hardware that you've ever gotten, but a night playing around with hardware is always a good night in my book.
There you go. It's by far the cheapest graphics card I think I ever purchased.
Yeah? Which one is it?
It's an NVIDIA 300 something.
Okay.
$100 on eBay. Sold.
Yeah, literally something to just get you some video, like you said.
Yep, indeed.
That's awesome.
So, anywho, what's new, Andrew? In our space, not in the graphics card area. We can talk graphics card also, but
nothing. Not a single thing has happened in the last week. You know that's a lie. All right. I've got a few things just going down my list here that I would love to share today. All right. First things first, we've talked about this toolkit a few times here on Office Hours, but our friends Matthias and Peter released an intro video on the Intune Debug Toolkit over on MS Endpoint Manager's Jungling the Cloud channel. Quick video, about 11 minutes. Very useful toolkit that we use for troubleshooting things like Autopilot enrollment and making sure that endpoints can actually reach the Microsoft Intune and Autopilot endpoints. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do with this toolkit. It really is a number of tools put together and is really going to help your life troubleshooting some of these issues because as I've learned from you, Johan, it's true that the cloud does not fix everything, and we do still have to troubleshoot. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
So great video there, and fantastic toolkit. If you haven't used it before, highly recommend it. Damien put out another blog post. As I see a common theme with Damien's blog posts: log analytics, Azure automation accounts. Equals some fantastic additions to Intune. So he's taking some information around the Intune discovered apps that show up on each individual client in Intune. So these are the applications that Intune is seeing are actually installed on a device, and has built a dashboard out of them, or out of that information, rather. As you can see here, if I scroll down, basically has a workbook with all of this log analytics information here. Very cool stuff, as always, from Damien. Also, Johan, you mentioned that I believe you attended this live last week, but Patch My PC put together a fantastic video around Autopilot enrollment. And they actually released the recording on Friday.
Yep. No, that was a great webinar. Absolutely great.
100% worth the 82 minutes right here.
Yeah.
Not surprising at all. Let's see. What else did I have? Oh, there we go. Sorry. Did come across this blog post as well, and I've seen it at a couple of different forums, but this is the most comprehensive, I think. Tony Redman over at Office 365 IT Pros wrote that there were some new graph permissions available for user accounts, which I'm very excited about. Any additional granularity and permissions around Graph is fantastic. For the longest time, we've had to use things like user.read.all or user read-write all, which gives you access to every bit of information in each individual user object. So we're starting to see some additional granularity here where you only get access to enable and disable the account, or the mail properties of the account, the password profile, and the phone information. So nice to see this granularity. I'm hoping we get more and more of this to help us keep things secure, of course. Did want to give a little bit of a reminder here. So we talked a lot about upcoming conferences and events last week. Of course, I'm sure we didn't hit all of them, but we hit quite a few. Another reminder is for Microsoft's technical takeoff coming up here March 3rd through 6th. This has been a great event that we've really enjoyed the last few years, where Microsoft will have some short videos, short meaning I've seen them from 15 minutes to, let's say, 30 minutes, as well as some live online Q&A covering various topics like Entra, Intune management, Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop. You can see here they've talked about Active Directory in the past, and oftentimes with these shorter videos, they're focusing on very specific things. One of my favorite ones in years past was specifically around laps, what we could do with Windows laps right before it was released. Now we're seeing it out in production, but they gave a little bit of an idea of what was coming up. And what we could expect. So I liked that it was very a specific topic.
I also like the fact that they kept their support team and product team engaged, not just for when the video was played back or when it was a live video, but they were answering questions live in the comments that came in, and they continued to do that for a good while. I'd like to say almost 24 hours, but at least throughout the entire day that the event happened. So I really hope they do that the same this time around. But that was great, because people posting a lot of great questions, and I'll say it's worth it just to go through and read the questions. That you often find some gold bars on those as well, or nuggets. How do you say it?
Yeah, I would say gold nugget.
Yeah,
nuggets of information.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep, I completely agree. It's a nice event, and especially having it so focused around what we and our audience are typically involved in. We'll never complain with that. One of the last things that I wanted to show here is last week I talked about the Entra PowerShell module went GA, so I was playing around with it a little bit. You can do a lot of the things in the Entra PowerShell module that you can already do in the Microsoft Graph SDK or Microsoft.graph module, as you may know it. But the nice thing about the Entra module is it's specifically around Entra. It's nearly, but not quite, a direct replacement of the Azure AD PowerShell module, and it's much lighter footprint. There are only a few sub-modules. So once I install it, we can look right here and see how many we have available. So I've installed both. There is a production, I shouldn't say production, but there's a module that points to the v1.0 graph endpoint, and there is a separate module that points to the beta graph endpoint. So you can see here there are far fewer sub-modules. We just have applications, authentication, directory management, governance groups, reports, sign-ins, and users. So it's much lighter weight if you're primarily just working with Entra. Just a few basic things that I was using. We can do things like get, you do need to connect Entra, I think it is, yep. And then from there, we can just do a get Entra group. And it'll pass back all of the groups that I have in my tenant. I can do things like get Entra user. And let's see if I can actually type this filter off the top of my head. Let's do a starts with display name Andrew, for example. Or, you know what, better yet, use one of my demo users there. There we go. So we've got a couple of user objects there that are showing up. So again, pretty similar to things like getMG group, getMG user. We can set information, we can get information, standard PowerShell module stuff. But I do appreciate that it's much lighter weight. And if you're really only using the Azure AD PowerShell module, this might be a little bit easier to get into than the whole Microsoft Graph SDK. So just wanted to share a little bit about my experience there so far. It's looking good. The last thing that I wanted to ask about is, Johan, I noticed yesterday a little bit of conversation around PowerShell script coming out to actually patch the boot media for Windows. I wanted to see if you had any thoughts around this PowerShell script that Microsoft released and their fix.
Well, it was quite a long script to just copy some files, but it's a signed script, so that is good. There is a lot of modules, not modules, functions in it to do the different aspect of it. So it's a very well written script, but technically you can probably get away with 20, 30 lines of code that would do the same thing. And this one's like 500 plus the signature on top of that. So, but yeah, so at least it's nice that they provide something to help out with this. I was reading up on another article as well. See if I can go ahead and find it. Turned out to be the best article I've seen on that particular CVE issue. Let me just authenticate and see if I can get access to that post that I had.
Sounds good.
Love MFA.
Oh, yes. So do all of our users.
No, they don't.
Oh, dang it.
Let's verify my link. All right, I found it. All right. So were you done with the skip there?
Oh, yep.
All right, let me go ahead and steal the screen real quick then. So this one here, written by a Microsoft fellow, Helmut Wagensonner, guessing out of Germany, but he's a solution architect at Microsoft. This one turned out to be from last year. I just missed it. He posted this at some point in July, August, whatever. But this goes through that mitigation and not yet explains the problem very well and what the mitigations are and how they work. He also provided guidance on how to add this to the different Pixel solutions. Like you have a ConfigMgr Pixel server, what do you need to do to have that support these new UEFI loaders or EFI files, and also give some warnings that basically make sure you do this in a very specific order. So highly recommend this to read this blog post. Very well written. And the best part that I've seen all day or all year, or last year for that matter, was the last 4 steps here. What you need to do in order for things. And this was the most interesting part to me. This is where you update the Pixel server, but you do that after you have come to the one of the steps in the mitigation. But then once you're done with all that, then you finish it up. This is where you revoke all the entries that are no longer allowed, and just a great article. So we'll put this link in the list as usual. But great read, or I thought it was a great read.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Looks like some good Friday night reading with the family right there.
Mm-hmm.
After a long week.
Yeah. There is also a PowerShell script that helps you update the boot image. So that's a shorter version of the longer version script. Yeah.
Very cool. Looking forward to reading that.
Yep. And then our friends over at Patch My PC, they have been churning out blog posts left and right lately, but this one I stumbled across that tries to demystify basically everything that goes on related to Windows Update and registry, or rather when registry information is preventing updates from coming down to our devices in a timely fashion or at all. But great read. Long post, but well worth the time reading. So highly recommend that one as well. Fresh of the presses.
Awesome.
Yes. Finally, on my part, up on our academy, we started to add in a few different solutions that we offer in addition to our trainings. But this one here that we highlighted a few times here, February 20, free event, free webinar. We are almost up to 1,000 registrations on that one. It's by far our most successful mini course in terms of registrations. At least we haven't presented it yet, so I cannot kind of talk for that, but that'll be fun. So if you haven't joined us already or signed up for it, please do. Should be a fun one, and it gives an indication to, well, there is an interest to figure out something else. There are so many folks out there that's using it. So
that's what I was going to say. I think that's a good indication of how many people are still actually using it today.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. I also spent my week unsuccessful trying to figure out or find a link that clearly stated for how long ConfigMgr itself is supported. Because over the years, from various Microsoft folks and even talking to partners, ISVs that work with ConfigMgr, it has always been, it's going to be supported for at least 10 years after the last public release. But my searching skills failed me, miserable on that one. The only thing I found was one for ConfigMgr 2012 that stated that. So I reached out to a bunch of Microsoft folks that I knew, but so far nobody has replied yet and say, yep, that is absolutely true. This is where that information is. But I'm guessing some of the organizations that are running ConfigMgr today, we have some really large banks and the DoD, the defense, the army, they use it. And they usually have really it has to be supported for 10 years, otherwise you're not going to use it.
Yeah.
Type agreements. So I think it's 10 years. I was just hoping I would find it somewhere because that would give a lot of people ease, because there have been a lot of chatter lately, like, okay, for how long is ConfigMgr actually going to be around? So we'll see. Time will tell. Okay. That was all I had. Do we have any questions?
We do. It's looking pretty busy already today. So we'll start with the first one we have here is from Jamal over on YouTube. Is there any way to trigger a batch file or a script when patch deployment status is above a certain threshold?
I mean, I'm assuming this is this ConfigMgr or Intune? That's the question.
Yeah, great question.
Either way, the information is available. So you can have a script that looks up that value, both in ConfigMgr and in Intune, and of course run a script if that happens. So in Intune, you most likely have to go through Graph for ConfigMgr, either WMI or contact the SQL server directly in your script. So it should be doable. I just haven't seen a script that does it.
No, some sort of scheduled task maybe that kicks off and checks that information regularly.
Yep.
And then fires off another script based on if you're above 85%, do this thing.
Yeah. I mean, in ConfigMgr you have alerts also, and the alerts can send notifications. So that could be an option if this is about Config Manager. So yeah, doable. I just haven't seen a blog post explaining it or documentation about it. Other than default alerts, of course.
Yep.
They are documented.
All right. So James is having James over on YouTube having an issue here where it's noticed that the Microsoft Entra hybrid join devices display MDM Microsoft Intune. Oh, excuse me. Didn't want to cough into the microphone.
Nope.
All right. Hybrid join devices display MDM Microsoft Intune, but Entra join devices show none instead of MDM Microsoft Intune. I'm not sure why. All users have an E5 license, and we have a P2 license for Entra. We observe that when enrolling the devices, Microsoft Intune appears initially, but as soon as we pass the enrollment status page, it changes to none. So the question here was, is it safe to skip the enrollment status page during the user setup phase of hybrid enrollment process?
Nothing that rings a bell. I'm assuming he's referring to when you look at devices, either in Intune or in Entra. Didn't quite get which portal it was looking in, but if it was this one here, managed by, the way he worded it was probably Entra.
That's what I'm thinking too, because you can look at the properties of the device.
So here I have
MDM column.
Yeah, so here I have a bunch of these devices here and a few others. They are Entra joined only and enrolled into Intune as part of that process. And they should show up here. This device here exists, but it was never enrolled. This was one of the devices we used in one of our trainings last year. So that one had an Entra join, but it never enrolled into Intune, and therefore it didn't have any MDM provider listed, or the enrollment failed. I don't see how that can be related to enrollment status page users being skipped, but I don't know. I haven't really tried that scenario.
Yeah, same. I'm just looking through my own here. I've got some Autopilot devices that have MDM set to none, but I don't know how much that's even worth considering I'm spinning up Autopilot devices all the time, and who knows if I went through the whole process or not.
Yeah. I only have a few devices that are different. This is a tenant attached device, so has ConfigMgr instead of Intune. Well, sorry, James. No great answer to that question, other than troubleshoot your enrollments.
Yeah, same here. I would agree, and I wonder if I don't know. I'm trying to think of, like you said, Johan. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of how the enrollment status page would actually affect that. But sorry, James, nothing here either. Benny's got a question here around updates or drivers. So with Windows Update for Business, when deploying drivers, is it possible to get them to install on log off or log on? Some updates do annoy users, such as graphics updates.
Not really, no. I haven't seen any hooks for that at all, and I can't think of how to do it either. those updates or driver updates that you, if I go back to my Intune tenant, go back to my devices here, Windows, and updates and driver updates, those are all part of the regular Windows Update agent. And they follow the policies that you set here from when they will become available to the device. These drivers do not follow the other updates that you may do from update rings. So you may very well end up having a device reboot twice in a month just because there happen to be driver updates that happen at the same time. I know there have been some requests of basically asking Windows to, all right, if you have driver updates and you do have monthly updates, please do it at the same time to only require one reboot. But I haven't seen any confirmation that work hasn't been even started. But no, these policies have fairly limited controls of this. If you want to have control to do things that log on or log off, you have to do something custom. Create custom packages in Intune that you download and have a script installed on the devices, or leverage a ConfigMgr sequence if you're in a co-managed scenario to have that one do driver updates. But for Intune alone, with nothing but this, you have very limited options. But again, it's not too hard to write a PowerShell script that does apply a package, run PnP util. I did write a blog post a while ago comparing the only two tools basically that can do driver updates that are built into Windows. But long story short, these utilities you can drive from a PowerShell script. So you only need to have a Win32 app that downloads a driver package and then run that script. And this one you can of course tie into other types of events. You can have a scheduled task looking for a login or log off to actually do something, or you can have this script generate a file that script looks for. So it's doable. It's nothing ready. You have to develop it yourself or hire someone to do it for you.
Yep.
But great question. Good point. Would be nice to have more controls.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone at Microsoft is listening.
They might, you never know.
I know. Hint, hint. Got a question over here from Jason on Facebook. I've got the dreaded 800-7002 error on one of my DPs. We have HTTP and HTTPS directory access, and Windows authentication is enabled. Any idea on what else to check?
No, the SMSTS log file usually gives a quite clear indication to what's going on in that scenario. So other than reviewing that one and perhaps enable debug for it if it's not enabled. It is enabled by default, so a lot of folks have it even though they may not need it.
Did you write about that at some point?
Probably.
Let me see. Not deploy. Oh my gosh, I cannot.
Yeah, I did. Back in 9 years ago.
Probably still relevant.
Well, a sequence is a sequence. It's not like it's changed a lot the last 20 years.
Exactly.
But I did put together a blog post around debugging these types of errors. I have to admit, I don't quite remember what I wrote, but yeah,
So
the log file should give you an indication.
yeah, Jason followed up and said that he's getting a 401 authentication failure. So,
Yeah, that can be anything from certificate to time being wrong on the devices, or a number of other things.
clear as mud.
Yeah. Good, worth mentioning that the IIS log files can be useful also to troubleshoot this. But yeah, nothing that rings a bell. I mean, if you get me a log file, I can take a look, but nothing that.
Yeah. And just another follow-up comment from him here. 59 of 60 of the DPs are working fine.
Well,
That'll
if it's
happen.
just one DP that doesn't, nuke that one from orbit and set up a new one. That's rather worth the time troubleshooting a lot,
Yeah.
because then you know it's not something else.
All right. I did see, I don't know that it changes our answer much, but Jamal did follow up that the patching question was for ConfigMgr. I think it'd be the same thing, script to check that patch compliance.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to this error.
Oh, yeah.
If it's just one DP that is different, verify that it has the same components from IS, because that's I stumbled across causing these errors. Like somebody set it up, but you didn't do it quite in the same way as all the others.
Yeah.
So maybe do that before nuking it from orbit.
Good. Quick check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Another question here around hybrid. With hybrid Autopilot, what's the best way to deploy the CM client? Understand that it has to be done outside the ESP. Is there a third-party script that we can use to delay the install of Win32 apps? Hybrid, I'm not sure, only because if it's hybrid Autopilot, I try to avoid it. I've been fortunate enough to do so thus far.
Yeah, same here. I haven't been able to avoid it completely, but I haven't tried to do it with co-managed, I think. There are some scripts up on Reddit that does it. That was for pre-provisioning scenario. I mean, the challenge is the scenario is not really supported.
So,
Trying to find the support statement on it.
let me see if this has it. Niehaus wrote a blog post about running a ConfigMgr task sequence during hybrid Autopilot.
Of course it did.
This might be useful, Johan, if you want to flip over to my screen.
I can do that.
Because this does talk about using. So we've got a bulk registration token that we can get from ConfigMgr, use it with Intune co-management settings. But, you know, when it comes to hybrid autopilot, it's a bit messy. And I think, with this one, Michael's goal was to run a whole sequence, but you might be able to take a piece of this and actually do the client install. I'll share this either way.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I found another post, not sure how related that one is. It was from Nick Benton. Let me bring my screen over and I'll share it. But this one here that kind of touched upon a similar scenario. So maybe go through that one and see if there are some that helps. But I think it's one of those that is actually not supported. And these folks just found a workaround to it.
Mm-hmm. Would agree with that.
But I will share these links if they bring some joy and happiness to you. Fantastic.
All right. We've got a question over here on YouTube around updates. I have a theory that users hate update notifications much more than actually having to update. I wouldn't disagree with that theory. Generally, how quickly do most larger companies update these days?
Most organizations that I've been working with, they patch within the month is over. So within 30 days from patch Tuesday.
Yep.
And a good chunk of that happened the first 21, 24 days-ish, the first few weeks.
Yeah. Common deployment that I've been seeing of many, but I've seen it more than once, so I guess I'm considering that common. Delaying the production rollout for about a week after patch Tuesday, and then a deadline about a week after that with a grace period if necessary. So within 2 weeks out of patch Tuesday, you're at, say, 90+% compliance. But I agree, within the month, definitely.
Yeah.
Not so
we are
good.
talking large organizations, hundreds
Yes.
of thousands of folks.
As we've talked about here many times, not so good to keep devices unpatched these days. So we find folks doing it faster and faster if possible.
Yeah.
Great question.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Do we have any other questions?
I see David Segura popped in to say hello. Hello,
Yeah,
David.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to have you back.
Yes. Yes. I don't see anything at the moment, but we do have 20 minutes left if anybody has any other questions. We unfortunately don't have any Star Wars to talk about at the moment. We've got a couple more months before we can start talking about that.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. For those of you that arrived late, I highly recommend joining us on February 20, free event. So bring your questions, try to stump us.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
We did just have a question come in from LinkedIn. How is patching going to be done if WSUS is deprecated? Download the KBs manually, for example. That might be an option. Any thoughts on that?
No, it'd have to be. If that really goes away in 10 years' time or whatever the deadline is, yeah, it's about 10 years because 2025 has it and it was just released. So in 10 years' time, you either have to go cloud or figure out something else.
Mm-hmm.
or if Microsoft releases some other solution to do it locally.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been the common thought around this, I think, is, gosh, how much can change in this space in 10 years?
We did 10 years ago. We didn't even have the Intune platform we have today. We had Intune, yes, but it was a very different Intune.
Yep.
Not even remotely the same.
So I think when we're talking about 10 years, is that it's, even though the deprecation has been announced, it is part of Server 2025.
It
and
is
the end
part
of
of yeah. It's,
the
WSUS is part of Windows Server 2025, and Windows Server 25, with all the components in it, is supported 10 years.
yes.
So that's how I made that conclusion. You probably shouldn't wait 10 years to figure something out if you need to do something on premises, but
Yep.
if not, Microsoft is filling that gap. I bet you that will be third-party providers, ISVs, that will develop something that you can leverage. Most organizations, I think, will go cloud. Software updates is today the number one workload that has been moved over to Intune, like by far the number one workload. But that there will always be organizations who simply cannot, that they will have networks that they do not have internet access. They still need to patch them.
Yep.
So,
well, and on topic here, we've got a question from Mickey over on Twitter. Because there's another old habit that's going to die hard. Not sure if this is one for you guys, but how would you recommend patching Windows Server OS using on-prem infrastructure? WSUS? If so, does that support patching on demand, or does it need to be scheduled? Been a while since looking at WSUS.
WSUS is kind of limited in what controls you have for the updates. It's basically using you approve the updates and the regular policies that deals with the deployment of them. If you want control, you need to have ConfigMgr or Azure Arc. Both of them is not free. Azure Arc, I'll say it's pretty expensive if you have a lot of servers.
Yeah.
Because patching is $5 per device per month, just for patching. And that adds up a little bit if you have 1,000 servers.
Yeah.
It works.
I agree totally on the pricing side, and it does work. I mean, and if you want to use Arc can actually do some really cool things. You can do more than updates. You can, kind of view the logs that are going on a device. You can do some resource monitoring and many other things. Our friend Michael Nystrom has shown us a number of cool things that it can do. Yes, Mickey, ARC.
Yeah. So I can bring it up. I used to have a few devices that was patching that way.
Same. Let me see if I have mine as well. It is a Microsoft product.
Yeah.
So essentially, you onboard your endpoints into Arc, which installs a client, and then that information gets plugged into Azure, as you can see here on Johan's screen.
Yeah. So there are updates you can create from here. Works well.
I see on one of yours right there, there's your no updates data and a couple of different update statuses there. Cool. Yeah, like I said, I agree. I think it's the $5 for updates that you mentioned, and maybe $15 if you want to do more than updates.
Yeah, it's not free.
No, not at all. All right. So Benny's got an issue with company portal, sometimes not displaying apps. Seems very random. Sometimes they show and sometimes they do not. This is both Intune and ConfigMgr apps. Have you seen this before? I've seen things like, actually just yesterday, Johan and I were running a training and company portal took a good 20 to 30 seconds, it felt like, at least, before those apps eventually popped up. But I haven't seen anything consistent. Usually the apps do eventually show up, even if it's slow. Like if I'm on a low resource VM, I'll see it, which would be an expected scenario, I think. I don't typically see them not show up at all. How about you, Johan?
No, I'm with you on that one.
Okay. James just adding some feedback in here on patching. They patch every second week of the month in their organization. Good. Benny's asking, can Intune do software metering yet?
No. It does not. You can get limited information if you have more than 23, more than 10 users running an app or starting an app at some point. That can show, but not through software metering. You have to buy something that give you that functionality on top of Intune. Keep ConfigMgr if you want to do software metering.
It's not detailed, but I just saw a comment on Reddit. I've not seen any third-party tools that will do this, but did read an interesting article about using App Locker in audit mode to see who is using which apps. Let's see if I can.
Yeah, so clever solution.
Yeah. Oh, here. It looks like a Microsoft article.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll drop that in the links. Maybe that'll be helpful.
Yep, thank you. This, by the way, was the Azure Update Manager I was referring to earlier to do patches of those devices. The main reason it's not working at the moment is that those two devices that I had, they are turned off. And it's just really hard to do patching when the devices are off.
Quite the challenge.
They were patched once, though, so there is that.
That's good. Yeah, and Arc can do more than Windows as well. Linux servers, if you've got both. I definitely like what I've seen out of it. If you have a smaller footprint smaller mixed footprint of both Windows servers, Linux servers, you can onboard SQL servers as well. And there's some other resources that you can onboard.
Yeah, and it does support Windows clients too, but it's not intended for your traditional Office workers. It's more intended for example, Azure Arc has maintenance windows. Intune doesn't have maintenance windows. But if you have machines that are controlling like a production plant or something where you truly want to configure, well, updates happens on Saturdays between 1 and 5 p.m., you can create maintenance windows here, and it will honor those. But again, you have to pay for that. So Microsoft does have basically Azure Arc Windows client. There was a section for, well, this was all the supported operating systems, and you can see there's a good chunk of them. But there is one for clients. Yeah, this one here. Where there very clearly is that, yeah, it is supported on Windows 10 and Windows 11, but those are devices intended for devices that are like servers, fulfilling these things.
Oh yeah, good examples: digital signage, POS, point of sale solutions, back office management tasks. I see there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the recommendation stands here for normal machines.
Yep.
Use either Intune or ConfigMgr. All right, good stuff.
All right. Anything else that we missed here?
Yeah, a whooping 8 minutes to go. Oh, good lord, that coffee was not warm anymore.
Yeah, that'll happen. You all set for the ice storm heading this way this evening?
Yeah, I heard about that. They were closing some of the activities tonight for the kids. So hopefully it will pass without incident. But yeah, we're
Let's
locked
hope
up.
so.
Yeah. All right. I do not see any more questions. So, as always, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Andrew, for sticking with me here. And we hope to see you again next week. Have a good one.
Thanks. Have a great one, everyone.